Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about my recommended reads for historical fiction. I've done 2 of these videos in the past. I will link both of them down below. The first one is really old. I would just watch the second one because I repeat books from the first one anyways. But this video, I'm not going to be talking about any of the books that I mentioned in my previous recommendations, so it's going to be a whole new set of recommendations. So a very notable title, The Book Thief, will be missing from this video because I've already talked about it. Now today's video is sponsored by Penguin Teen in honor of the recent release of Orphan Monster Spy by Matt Colleen. I can't wait to read this book. A number of things sold me on it. One, historical fiction is one of my favorite genres, particularly World War II historical fiction. You'll see a lot of that on this list. And number 2, it is blurbed by one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Wein. So when I saw her stamp of approval, I was like, yes, I need this in my life. So this is set in Germany in 1939, and it follows our main character, Sarah. Sarah is 15 years old and Jewish and finds herself on the run from the Nazis all by herself after her mother has been shot at a checkpoint. But she soon befriends a mysterious man who has a pretty intense and risky mission for her. Her job is to infiltrate a Nazi boarding school and befriend the daughter of one of the Nazis' top scientists. Not only that, but she needs to find the blueprints for a bomb that could destroy all of Western Europe. Luckily, Sarah is pretty good at impersonations as her mother was an actress, but I mean, infiltrating a Nazi boarding school and finding their plans and exposing them is not an easy task for anyone. This sounds like such an intense and unique historical fiction, and I cannot wait to try it out. I'm just so intrigued by it, and I hope I will be able to get to it very soon. Since we're already on the topic of World War II historical fiction, let's just get into those. So the first book is actually an adult book, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I listened to the audiobook for this recently, and I'm sure you guys have heard of it because I have kind of not stopped talking about it since I read it. Everyone had been telling me how amazing this book was and telling me that I need to read it, and I was like, yeah, it's on my list, like I'll get to it eventually. And honestly, I just thought there was no possible way that it could live up to all the hype that surrounds it. But it didn't just survive that hype, it literally just exceeded it. It exceeded all of my expectations. This is one of those books where while I'm reading it, I feel like it's really happening. And then when I'm done, I like remember that it's not real, but I'm still left thinking and reeling after this story. It's the amazing story of 2 sisters in Nazi-occupied France as they are trying and fighting to survive, and it is just heartbreaking and honestly made me think of my family's own experiences in the Netherlands and just how difficult it would be to live during that time period and to see your country occupied by this terrible enemy. I just can't even imagine living through that, and this book did such a good job of really delving into that and delving into the women's side of the war, which I think is a story that is super important. So if you're looking for an adult historical fiction, I hope that you try this one out and pick it up because it is honestly so good and so heartbreaking, and you're gonna need tissues, let me tell you. Next is The Girl in the Blue Coat by Monica Hesse. This is kind of a similar note to The Nightingale because this really made me think of my family, but that is mostly because this book is actually set in Amsterdam in World War II. You follow the main character, Hanna. I'm probably saying that wrong, I'm really sorry, but you follow her as she has been working on the black market, trying to survive and make some money. However, one of her neighbors tasks her with trying to find a Jewish girl who she had been hiding who has gone missing. So the story turns into this mystery full of high stakes, and my favorite part about it was very realistic. World War II is a time where everyone is just fighting to survive, and decisions that might seem easy now in retrospect really are difficult because it's kind of a time where you have to put yourself first. This brought so much nostalgia to me, just remembering all of my Dutch heritage, and it really made me think of my family and the stories that I've heard about them and how they helped out during the war, and it was just such a well done story, very well researched, and I really enjoyed it. Next is Salt to the Sea by Brutus Apetys. In my last recommendations video, I don't think I had read this book yet, so I recommended Between Shades of Grey, which I do still really recommend, but this book is just magical. Honestly, Brutus Apetys is such an incredible historical fiction writer. She makes you care for these characters and absolutely tears your heart out in the end. This follows various characters all coming from different places as they come together and are trying to flee Germany at the tail end of World War II. It's really not a safe place for anyone, and they all have their different things that brought them there, and you really get to delve into their stories and why they're running away and what brought them there in the different perspectives of this story, because it's told in, I think it's 5 or 6 perspectives. 4, I was close. But this is telling the story of something I didn't really know about, which is one of the greatest maritime tragedies in history, and it's just so well done. again, I highly recommend that you check it out. Next is The Pearl Thief by Elizabeth Wein. Elizabeth Wein is the author that did the blurb on Orphan Monster Spy, and in my last video I talked about Codename Verity by her. Rose Under Fire is the sequel to that, and that is also absolutely incredible, but The Pearl Thief is the one I wanted to talk about today. So The Pearl Thief is different because it's set in 1938 in Scotland, and it gives you a really interesting perspective on river pearls, which is something I had never heard of before. This is actually a prequel where you get to know more about one of the characters of Codename Verity, and I thought it was amazing to learn more about her and where she came from, and it gave me a greater appreciation for her as a character, and I already had a very intense appreciation for her. I think this was just really cool and such an interesting thing to look into. There's lots of different mysteries going on in regards to the pearls, and you get to see the whole thing unfold, and it's really cool. The rest of the books are kind of jumping all around different time periods in history. So first we have The Valiant by Leslie Livingston. This is a historical fantasy that follows a female gladiator, and it is based on the fact that there was evidence excavated that showed that there were female gladiators. I don't really know a lot about ancient Rome, admittedly. It's something that I would like to learn more about. I just haven't really delved into it because I find it incredibly confusing. But I felt like this book did a really good job of helping my understanding and showing these amazing female warriors, and I just fell in love with the characters, and I haven't read the sequel yet, but I can't wait to read it. And Leslie Livingston is also a Canadian author, which is always a thumbs up in my books. Get it? Books? Moving on. Next is Walk on Earth a Stranger by Ray Carson. This is set in the US during the gold rush. This is another historical fantasy because our main character can actually sense gold. But the main character's father has been murdered, so she finds herself fleeing west to California, which isn't exactly an easy task for a girl, so she ends up disguising herself as a man and going across gold rush era America. And it was just really cool, lots of cowboys, all that stuff, and I really enjoyed it. Next is After Alice by Gregory Maguire. This is an interesting one because it's really like historical fantasy, but historical fantasy retelling. So this is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, obviously, but it goes to 1860s Oxford and shows how the people that Alice left behind are reacting to her going down the rabbit hole and wondering, like, where did she go? This was really cool, a very unique historical fiction, so if you're looking for something a little bit fun, kind of nerdy, because it really delves into Victorian England and the standards that are particularly set upon women, which is something I really enjoyed. It's really like a satire surrounding that, then you might like this one, but it is definitely a very nerdy read. Next is The Lady Elizabeth by Alison Weir. This is all about Queen Elizabeth I, but in her youth, up until the time that she ends up being crowned queen. I enjoyed the perspective in this and the what if questions that it addressed, but I particularly liked the fact that it followed her as a kid, and you saw her kind of grappling with the fact that her father had her mother beheaded and now is going through all these different wives and having them beheaded, and she's like, what is happening? But you also get to see how defiant Elizabeth is and how she doesn't care what other people want from her. She is determined to rule in her own right, and I found her to be a really admirable character. I find her to be one of the most fascinating historical figures, so I really liked reading this historical fiction about her, especially because Alison Weir is actually a historian. She has written a biography on Elizabeth I, so it was interesting to get the perspective of a historian on things that she thought, kind of, what if these things happened? How would history have coped with that? So this was really fascinating, and I also read Innocent Traitor by her, and that one was also very good, and it wasn't as good as this one, but I want to read the rest of her books too. Next is My Plain Jane by the Lady Janies, aka Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is actually the companion sequel to My Lady Jane, which I believe I mentioned in the last historical fictions recommendations that I did, and you don't have to have read that one first in order to read this one, but you really should because it's amazing. Both of these books are so hilarious and just such a joy to read. They bring a smile to my face every time I delve into them. They're so weird and quirky, and My Plain Jane delves into Jane Eyre and once again is making fun of the Victorian era, and I just love when things make fun of the Victorian era. Particularly this one delves into the Victorian Gothic, which I think is hilarious. I just like making fun of Gothic things. It's honestly just such a fun and different historical fiction, so definitely try this out if you are looking for an upbeat and lighthearted and funny historical fiction. Next is A Mad Wicked Folly by Sharon Biggs Waller. This book is set in Edwardian England, and it follows the women's suffragette movement, which I really liked seeing. It was interesting to delve more into that era because it's honestly one that I don't know a ton about. I enjoyed our main character as she is just like, why are these things put on women? Like, why do I have to live like this? Why can't I just make decisions for myself? And she defies expectations, but not really intentionally. She is just trying to live her life. Like, she poses nude because she wants to be an artist, but then she ends up getting caught posing nude, so then this whole scandal ensues, and she's just like, I just wanted to make art. But she is definitely a fiery character, and I really loved her. And the final book I'm going to recommend today is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. Really, this entire series fits into this video, but I wanted to just talk about the first one today. So this is a murder mystery set in the time of the Jack the Ripper murders, and it's basically uncovering who Jack the Ripper is. This also really delves into the forensics and kind of scientific side of murder mysteries, which was super unique and really interesting to read about. Audrey Rose is one of my absolute favorite protagonists, and I just love her, and I love all the characters in this book, and it was so well done, so definitely check it out. So those are all the books that I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much once again to Penguin Teen for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to go and get your copy of Orphan Monster Spy by Matt Colleen. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe. I put out new videos every Monday and Thursday, as well as some bonus videos sometimes. You can also follow me on my social media. I have Twitter, and my Twitter is at Bookland, and I also have Instagram, and my Instagram is at Bookland. But all the information, as well as all my other social medias, are down below for you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!